Okay kids, ground rules. This is a 98% spoiler-free review, so for those of you who give a shit about such things, that means I'm not going to talk about surprises, cameos, specific plot twists, whether or not anyone important dies, whether anyone who died last time comes back somehow, because it's a comic book movie and those things can happen, no big moments, nothing that hasn't been dropped in the trailers, and even not all of that because I'm trying to be careful because I'm a nice guy sometimes. But even still, I can't really do a review without at least a bare description of the plot of the thing, i.e. this is the basic setup, what the main characters are attempting to accomplish, so if you consider that to be a spoiler in itself and would prefer to just know the review score up front, okay, fair enough. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. If you need some sort of comparable metric for measuring that, the first Avengers would be a 9, Infinity War would be about a 7, Age of Ultron would be like a 5. These are the MCU movies I'd say are actually kind of bad. These are the ones I'd be strongly inclined to call 10 out of 10s. My favorite Captain America was the first one, the best Thor and the best Iron Man are both the third ones, and the Incredible Hulk is underrated. We good? Okay then. And here we are at the ending that's not really an ending to a story that's not really a story when you get right down to it. As people are no doubt sick of me pointing out by now, what quickly became clear about what we now call the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that it works because it's structured to feel like a grand overarching omni-narrative if you're into that kind of thing, but it's really a set of individual movies and franchises that sometimes reference and bounce off each other and once every few years coalesce into a bigger crossover that retroactively pretend to like various events we're building to something specific. That's how you kind of had to know Infinity War was getting close to the end. After several films build up to the confrontation with looming big bad Thanos, it turned out there needed to be a whole movie of its own just to get around to telling us where he came from and what his goals were, because they hadn't done so in the previous movies, because they didn't know yet, because if you do try to plan out something like that in advance, you might end up with Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and Justice League, and nobody wants that. In any case, with that film sorted and the mother of all are you serious cliffhanger climaxes still fresh in audiences' minds, Endgame picks up after rather briefly but cleverly establishing that no, it will not in fact be as easy as tracking down the bad guy, finishing him off, and hitting reset, with an audacious skip forward just long enough for the surviving main characters to have undergone some interesting life, appearance, and personality shifts before introducing what is ultimately the film's main conceit, the chance discovery of a limited ability to leap backwards in time to prior events in recent history, i.e. previous Marvel movies, and perform certain tasks which, if successful, may allow the Avengers to, if not reverse the events of Infinity War, at least return one half of the universe Thanos genocided out of existence with his magic glove. In other words, about roughly 1/3 of the climax to the biggest serialized blockbuster undertaking pretty much ever is a clip show, or maybe more accurately the action movie equivalent of paging through the family photo albums before you go off to college, and given the circumstances, I have to admire how upfront they are about that aspect. Endgame might not be the most meta of the Marvel features, but it's definitely the most meta about the sentimentality that's come to underline the Avengers installments in particular. Almost everyone's story is so centered on family, surrogate family, longing therefore, lack thereof, etc. As soon as it becomes crystal clear that the second act is mostly going to be long stretches of various Avengers pairings, popping into key moments from their greatest hits catalog so the fans in the audience can laugh and cheer and be wistful about how far they've come, along with the characters, it's hard not to get into the spirit of the whole, ha, remember that part, or ooh, look who it is game, assuming you do in fact recognize some or any of it. Because if there is one thing that sets Endgame apart from its predecessor and the other two Avengers movies, and really the whole rest of the MCU period, it's that it really is the first one that does feel more tailored specifically for the devoted fans than for a casual, sure, I've seen a couple of these on TV here and there, general audience. Whereas I'd argue even Infinity War can be easily watched as a big wacky superhero epic with a bizarre ending outside the context of the other Marvel movies. For the most part, it feels like the main reason Endgame's runtime swelled to a full 3 hours is that one of those total hours could consist entirely of, for lack of a better word, fan service. Fortunately, for the most part, it's the good, mostly unobtrusive, we're all having a good time kind of fan service. Catchphrases are said, callbacks are called back to, references are referenced, beloved supporting characters are returned, old subplots are revisited, loose threads are tied up, things long left unsaid are said, new combinations and pairings and quip tradings are tried out, powers are tested against one another, closures are closed, that kind of thing. All in a lead up for a big climactic battle. Oh, fight me, it is not a spoiler to say that an Avengers movie has a battle near the end of it. What do you think they were going to do? Take Thanos to litigation? But yeah, there's a big battle that's also wall to wall, this one's for the fans' business, and it goes on, doing one big cool thing after the other, about 1/3 of which is stuff you've always wanted to see us do, stuff you needed to see us do one more time, and a surprisingly large final third that feels like a series of test runs also sprinkled liberally throughout the rest of the film for the prospective future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe itself, i.e. new team arrangements, pair-offs, and new to newer arrival characters getting big splashy showcase moments clearly designed to generate an entire year of spontaneous social media polling data about who and what should get its own movie next. How does it fare aside from the cultural event business, though? As is the case from the very best of the Marvel films, among which it definitely earns a place eventually. Apart from being an exceedingly fun action feature, it mainly works as a highly agreeable character piece. By now, most of the main featured players have been inhabiting these roles for close to a decade, and it's fun to see them both swing for the fences in classic mode and try on new, world-weary, deeply traumatized takes. True, it doesn't quite measure up to the elevated heights of Guardians of the Galaxy franchise's expertly honed sad clown, sarcastic whimsy, or Black Panther's legitimately transcendent topical gravitas, but there's a boldness to the way that the film attempts, I think mostly succeeds, in making a wish fulfillment fantasy about being able to unwind the end of the world really be about the fact that everyone still has to deal with having lived through it. On the acting front, it's the original Avengers crew who get the most to work with this time out, fittingly since it's supposed to be the final showcase for the bulk of them, though it would be spoiling to say who gets the biggest moments and why. Apart from that, the MVP surprisingly ends up being Karen Gillan as Nebula, who ends up centered more than you'd expect for plot reasons and carries a lot of important, difficult scenes. I'll be extremely curious to see how certain fans, either devoted or casual, respond to the way certain character stories conclude, as the eventual wind down and features a few endings that are more definitive than others, and the implications of which seem to raise more questions than it answers. All told, while in spots a bit shaggy and eventually not a wholly transformative experience, I can safely say Avengers Endgame is at once satisfying and comfortable, yet bizarre and utterly unique entry in what's turned out to be one of the most unique mass entertainment properties of its age. A fitting send-off and a fine preview of things to come. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10.